Here's my full 1-hour interview with Matthew Berry. I've released parts of it throughout the week, but here's the full interview. It is amazing content, and watch the entire thing through. Comment below, subscribe, follow, tell your friends. Top 5 running back. You're watching the Fantasy Football Show.
Smitty.
Take a lap. Okay, we're joined by Matthew Berry, the GOAT himself of fantasy football. Matthew Berry, I appreciate you coming on the Fantasy Football Show. Welcome.
Thank you, my friend.
Let's get into some fantasy football.
Sure.
Kenyan Drake is one of my biggest breakout candidates for 2020. This is the Dalvin Cook of 2020, and I can say that because his ADP is in the second round, much like Dalvin Cook's was, and I feel like the writing's on the wall. The top 5 running back numbers are in the cards. He had, if you look at weeks 9 through 17 when the Cardinals acquired him, he was, depending on your scoring, 4 or 5 for running backs in 2019. That's huge. And then he had 363 yards and 7 TDs in his final 3 games. Now, this isn't smart math, but if you extrapolate that, that's like 1,900 yards and 37 TDs. I'm not saying he's going to come close to that. That's not good math.
That's good.
But
right.
But that shows that this guy is coming out of 2019 on fire with momentum. The Cardinals wanted him. They're maturing. They acquired DeAndre Hopkins, who's going to stretch the field and make it virtually impossible for defenses to really focus on Kenyan Drake all year long with Kyler Murray moving around. What am I missing aside from injury that could keep him out of the top 5, top 6 running backs?
It's just it's lack of a track record. I don't have him as a top 5 guy the way you do, but I certainly listen. I think I have Kenyan Drake as an RB1, a lower end RB1. There's no question about it. You talk about what he did since he joined Arizona last year in week 9, averaged 18.9 touches a game, so the volume was there. Averaged over 100 scrimmage yards per game, 19.9 fantasy points per game in ESPN scoring, which was 3rd most among running backs. He played on 79% of snaps. That's the other thing, is he wasn't coming off the field, right? And to your point about, we know how much Cliff Kingsbury likes to throw the ball. He averaged 4.9 targets a game. That was 10th most among running backs. So he's basically getting 5 targets a game. And that was, just showing up and like, oh, by the way, here's the playbook. Hey, you might want to look at a couple of pages. Now he comes in the season knowing he's the guy. David Johnson's been moved to Houston. Chase Edmonds is a backup. They like him, but it's going to be Kenyan Drake. There's no question about it. So I think it's track record and injury history are the only concerns there, right? We just haven't seen him do it for a sustained period of time. It's not like he's a rookie. He's been in the league for a while. And he's a guy that, here's the other thing, is that he's never been a feature back in his NFL career. He was from week 9 on last year, but he wasn't at Alabama, and he never was at Miami under 2 different regimes, right? He had, sort of 2 different, wasn't under Brian Flores, wasn't under Adam Gase. No one has ever looked at Kenyan Drake and said, yeah, you're a workhorse. Why is that? We don't know. He was last year from week 9 on, and they've paid him. So the expectation certainly is he's going to be there. But because of the injury history, because of, his body build, do we think maybe he doesn't get 19 touches a game because they don't need to manufacture as much offense, because they've added DeAndre Hopkins, because Christian Kirk is healthy again this year? We expect that. Larry Fitzgerald is back. We hope for more from Andy Isabella in year 2. Maybe they get something out of Hakeem Butler, right, who was injured all of last year as well. So that's the argument, right? And it's a loose one. It's not a great one, right? But that's the loose anti-Kenyan Drake top 5 argument.
But what I love about his value is that this was the same argument we got at Dalvin Cook last year.
Sure.
And yet Kenyan Drake isn't being valued in a dangerous range where that becomes a concern. I feel like all the risk is baked into his 15, 18 overall value. So am I asking anybody to go draft him at number 5? No, I'm saying this is Dalvin Cook of 2020. And I honestly think that it reminds me a lot of Arian Foster in 2010, which, they play a little different. He's like a Kamara Foster hybrid. But this feels like, okay, you don't have a big track record, but he passes the eye test to an extreme degree. And he's in an environment that if he's not hurt, I don't know how he doesn't get top 5 to 10 running back numbers. So
The other piece of that here that I'll just mention to you is that I don't think what people appreciate about the Cardinals offense and what Kingsbury runs is that when they go 4 wide the way they do, like they purposely let in pressure, right? I mean, so when going 4 wide, you've got one less offensive lineman or one less blocker in essence, right? Mm-hmm. And so you're dropping back and you're letting pressure come. So it's easy to you're quickly dropping off to your pass catching running back, right? And so it's something that sort of it's one of the reasons why Murray was so key for them, because you need an athletic quarterback in that particular offense. I totally buy the argument. I agree with you that the risk is baked in, and he could be, that offense could be special. That offense could be very special.
And I love Chase Edmonds a lot too. You pair him with Edmonds, locked and loaded. I'm going to list off 2 players or 2 scenarios, and you give the answer in a confidence level of 0 to 10. So if I say Drake, Fournette, you say Drake, 8. That's your confidence level. Okay. Drake.
So wait, one question.
Yeah.
Is the confidence level based on the confidence level of that player versus the other player, or the confidence level just based on the player? So like in your scenario, Good. Am I saying I say 8 because I believe in Drake over Fournette to
correct.
An 8?
Correct.
Okay. Got it.
Against each other. Okay. First 2 names. Drake, Fournette.
Ha. I would say Drake and a 7.
Melvin Gordon, Todd Gurley.
Todd Gurley and a 5.
Kyler and DeAndre Hopkins stack, or A-Rod and Davante Adams stack?
Kyler and Hopkins stack, Davante Adams, A-Rod stack. Kyler, Hopkins, I'll take that stack, and I would say 8. Feel pretty confident of that.
Kamara versus Derrick Henry.
Kamara and 3.
Okay, this could be dynasty or redraft. It's I'm crazy bold. A lot of the stuff I do is bold and outside the box. And Barkley, McCaffrey, and no picks until round 7, or the regular draft slot from 1.07.
Barkley and McCaffrey, no picks till round 7.
Yes.
So you're missing 5 picks, or regular draft slot 107. I'll say Barkley and McCaffrey.
I like it. I'm going to ring the bell for you.
I'll take Barkley and McCaffrey, and I would say confidence level 6.
One of my,
I do this. I did this thing with my fans the last couple of years where I've done these vampire leagues,
mm-hmm.
and the rule there is that I don't draft at all. And everyone else drafts an entire full roster, and then I can only make my team up from whoever's left.
That's great.
But the rule is that throughout the year, once the draft is over, they can never make another move, and I have to make mine. I've got all waivers available to me, and then if I beat you in the regular season, I get to vampire one of your starters. So I can take one of my players and trade for one of your players. There's no trades.
Mm-hmm.
No trades, no moves after you do the draft. Okay.
That's great.
And it's not my idea. I didn't come up with the idea, but I've done it the last couple of years. And so I haven't won one of those leagues yet, but I've come very, very close. So assuming a 10 or 12 team league, McCaffrey, so basically, McCaffrey and Barkley, and then I'm basically filling in with the rest. I'll find a quarterback after round 7. I'm not
A-Rod,
wide receiver, super deep.
Yep.
Yeah.
I like it. So that's one of my favorite bold predictions or bold draft strategies is to do the 2-headed monster. You can do it in auction better than you could do it in a draft. If you get the 1 pick overall, then you can typically do it easier if you're trading draft picks. But I call it kicking the can down the road, where you essentially have a void that you've created because you've done like a 2-for-1 trade, but then you trade 2 more, like a 6th and 7th rounder or whatever, for another 5th. Keep kicking the can down the road to where the problem doesn't even matter because it's in a deep range. But I love that approach. I agree with you. Dynasty only questions right here to finish it out. Julio, AJ Brown.
AJ Brown.
Confidence level?
4.
Rookie 1.01 or Kenny Golladay?
This year?
Dynasty. Yep.
I will say Kenny Golladay unless we're talking. No, I'm still taking Kenny Golladay.
Okay.
Kenny Golladay, and I will say a 5.
1.01 or Aaron Jones?
Aaron Jones and also a 5.
1.01 Joe Mixon?
I'll take 1.01 and I'll say a 4.
Okay. Jerry Jeudy, Amari Cooper, Dynasty.
Amari Cooper. I'm still going with Amari Cooper. Just got paid. He's going to be in Dallas. He's going to be in Dallas with Dak for a while. We just don't know where Jerry Jeudy's going. I'll take Amari Cooper. But confidence level is like a 4.
Okay. Confidence level, we have a season, we don't have a season, or we have a partial season in 2020 in NFL?
Partial season, confidence level 7.
Okay, last question. Your internet connection goes down during quarantine time here at home. Your draft is taking place. You can call one person to draft for you. Field Yates or Secret Squirrel? Confidence level.
And do am I giving them the picks, or am I? I need to. This is important. Am I giving them the picks, meaning I'm on the phone and just they're doing what I tell them to do, or I'm just like, hey, draft for me, and I hang up the phone?
Yeah, they have to draft for you.
Field Yates.
Okay. Sorry, Squirrel.
Listen, I love the truth is either way. I mean, I love Daniel. Daniel definitely knows his stuff, but Field's great, and so the answer there would be Field Yates. But I will say both are super trustworthy. Like if I had to basically be like, don't screw this up. both guys are like Boy Scouts. Both guys are like, people forget Secret Squirrel was in the Army, in the Air Force for 6 years. Like he's a military man. So
yeah, he'll answer your call probably quicker than Field Yates, I'd guess.
No, Fields, it's annoying, honestly. Everything about, so many things about Field are annoying. And one of them is that Field always gets back to you immediately. You text him, you call him, boom, he's right there. He's right there. You tweet something, he immediately tweets back. Like, I don't know how he has time for a life, and he does. I mean, I met his wife. His wife is lovely. It's, there's no flaws with Field, and it drives me up a wall. I keep searching for them, and I keep poking him, trying to find one, and I can't find one. He's so far, he's flawless, and it's unbelievably annoying.
Matthew Berry, you've made it through the rapid fire face-off segment on the Fantasy Football Show. I like Gordon a lot, by the way. You mentioning Gordon. I think Gordon in Denver's like sneaky good. I think people scared about Lindsey are kind of off the rocker. I realize he'll be used, but if Melvin Gordon's the PPR specialist, you give him at least 50 or 60% of the rushes, he's still going to dominate the touches. And I think that offense is more it's going to be more powerful than people think on the ground in 2020, at least where his ADP is.
Here's my concern, because I'll be honest with you. Like, so we may disagree on this. I have Melvin Gordon as a top 20 running back, but not at the moment. I don't have him in my top 15. So I'm probably too low on him, or I'm probably lower on him than you are, I should say. Not necessarily I'm too low on him. My concern is this. Melvin Gordon, for his fantasy value, has needed two things, right? He's needed the touchdowns, and he gets them. So I'm looking this up really quickly. He had, 23 in his last 24.
That's insane.
Right, yeah, exactly. He's ridiculous, right? He's the only running back with 8 or more rushing touchdowns each of the last 4 years. So you don't get Melvin Gordon without giving it to him when you're getting close, 100%. So he's needed two things. He's needed the touchdowns. He's going to get that in Denver. And he's needed volume. Here's a guy that's had under a 4 yards per carry average 4 of the last 5 seasons. He's not efficient at all. He's always needed volume to get there, right? And in LA/San Diego, he's always gotten it. Does he get that volume in Denver? I'm with you. If you're ranking the Broncos running backs, it's Gordon over Lindsey, and it's not particularly close. Mm-hmm. But I don't think Philip Lindsey's going away. Couldn't you see a scenario where Philip Lindsey gets 10 to 12 touches a game?
I could, but historically, correct me if I'm wrong, but this staff doesn't typically split. But I think that you're right. There's a potential there. But for me, I just think Melvin Gordon being protected into the PPR work puts him at a level that I'm so comfortable with volume-wise. But, anything could happen. DeAndre Hopkins got traded to the Cardinals. Anything could happen.
Yeah, listen, it's a better offensive line. It's probably a more run-heavy offense than he had with the Chargers. Yeah. The problem is it as good an offense, right? Because the Chargers were a pretty good offense, right? They move the ball, and we'll see what a full season of Drew Lock brings. They have a better offensive line than I think they had in the Chargers, so that's a positive for Gordon. But I think it's going to be a slower paced team. I think they'll play at a much slower pace in terms of possessions per game than the Chargers did last year. Yeah. And other than Cortland Sutton, to me, at the moment, there's no one in the Broncos passing game that scares you. So feels like you're going to see more. He's going to see more 8-man fronts in Denver than he did with the Chargers when you've got to account for Keenan Allen and Hunter Henry and Michael Williams and Austin Ekeler out of the backfield. So that's the argument here. I think look, if a year from now you and I are talking and he wound up with 15 touchdowns, I'm not shocked. It's right. Melvin Gordon, right? Wouldn't be shocked if he has 10 touchdowns, 8. But I'm just worried. I'm a little worried about volume. And it's not necessarily all Philip Lindsay. I don't think this is an even split. I think it's 70-30. Gordon to Lindsay.
So last question on this part. So fourth round value, are you very comfortable with fourth round value?
100%.
Because that's where he's going, and I think that's where my excitement lies, is that he has the potential at 4.02 to literally win you a league. And if he disappoints, probably earns you almost 4.02 value. So I'm with you there. If you started your draft off, I haven't looked at ADP as closely as you have, but you're telling me he's going in the middle of the fourth or somewhere in the fourth round. Top, yeah.
And you start off with you get a stud running back in the right, you get whatever. Some stud running back in the first. You get a stud wide receiver in the second. Third, you decide to go Kelsey or Kittle, right?
Yep.
Something like that. And then you go another wide receiver. You go back to back with wide receivers, and you wind up with I'm making it up, but you've got whatever. You've got Hopkins and Julio, right, in the second and third. And then you come back around, and Melvin Gordon's your second running back when you've already got Zeke and so you've got Zeke, Julio, and Hopkins.
Yep.
And then Melvin Gordon, you're pretty psyched.
Yeah.
So to that point, I'm with you.
Okay.
If you get Melvin Gordon in the fourth and as your second running back, I think you're pretty psyched.
Yeah.
Assuming you nail the first 3 rounds.
I'm basing a lot of my off the ADP, so that, and again, that can change. Like you said, ADPs in August could be completely different. Ekeler is another player that I absolutely love in 2020, and I feel like he also has baked in no risk type of value, because this is a guy that not only you can't even call him this year's version of Dalvin Cook because he finished in the top 5 last year, yet people are ranking him in the 12 to 18 overall range. I don't see how you don't go at 12 and 13 Drake, Ekeler, and not feel crazy good about that combo in 2020. I don't care if I'm reaching high for Drake.
Listen, I think Austin Ekeler winds up being a first-round pick by the time we get to August. And honestly, if he's not, it means people like myself and you might have not done a good enough job. Because I'm going to be banging the drum for him too. I have him as a top 10 player overall. I think, first off, the guy was a monster last year without Melvin Gordon. And obviously Melvin Gordon is now in Denver. But even beyond that, from week 5 on, when Melvin Gordon was there, Melvin Gordon returned to week 5 on. From week 5, right? From week 5 on, Austin Ekeler was the 5th best running back in fantasy with Melvin Gordon there. And now Melvin Gordon isn't there. And I know the anti-Austin Ekeler argument is this. It's twofold. Number one is it's that, they're just going to replace Melvin Gordon with Justin Jackson. It's going to be a committee. Maybe they draft somebody or whatever, but it's going to be a committee. Okay, fine. Again, he was the 5th. Whoever they replace Melvin Gordon with ain't going to be as good as Melvin Gordon. And the guy was the 5th best running back in fantasy with Melvin Gordon on his team. The other anti-argument is Tyrod Taylor, right? And that they don't think that Tyrod Taylor is much more of a, for lack of a better phrase, Brett Favre, Josh Allen, kind of chuck it, street ball type player, right? That he's much more likely to throw it deep than he is to sort of dump it off the way that like a Phillip Rivers was. And that maybe he doesn't get nearly as many dump off receptions. And I guess my reaction to that is twofold. Number one is I don't know that Tyrod Taylor's the starting quarterback the entire year. We'll see what the Chargers do in the draft. I think there's a better than average chance
Newton
that
maybe
they draft someone high, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then the other piece of it is that Tyrod Taylor and Anthony Lynn are not stupid. Like, you don't sign Austin Ekeler to the contract that you signed him to retain him and not use him. Like, if you're Tyrod Taylor and you're running around looking for somebody, you know that Austin Ekeler is a weapon. And so, I don't know. I think Anthony Lynn and that offensive staff will find ways to get the ball in Austin Ekeler's hand. Why would you not?
And the way
He's such a star.
The way I look at it is, okay, so maybe he won't get 108 targets. Maybe he won't get 92 receptions because Rivers laser locked onto him like Ben Roethlisberger locked onto AB. So there's the potential drop off, but he's never had over a 557-yard rushing season. He's going to be run a lot more. I think it washes. Anything he loses in receptions, he gains in touchdowns, and he had 13 total touchdowns. I think he'd easily replicate that and get you 808, 807, 708. It's going to be a 1,500 total yard season regardless, right?
Here's a crazy stat for you. Since the start of 2018, Austin Ekeler is 6th among running backs in yards per rush after first contact. You don't think of that with Austin Ekeler, right? You think, oh, he's elusive, he's a good pass catcher, he's fast. Yeah. 6th among running backs in yards per rush after first contact since 2018. Like, he's a tough guy. He's a tough guy, and to your point, they're not scared about running him up the middle. Like, he got some goal line work last year. Once Melvin Gordon came back, they used him that way as well. Obviously, Melvin Gordon, I think, has 24 touchdowns in his last 25 games or 23 in his last 24, something like that. I mean, some ridiculous rate. But Eckler's not somebody that they're scared of going off tackle with.
What are your thoughts on Kyler Murray now that he gets DeAndre Hopkins? I already had him in my top 4 for quarterback. So when the news broke, and I'm in Arizona, but I'm no homer. You rarely hear me talk about Cardinal stuff. I can separate in my 16 years in this business, separate bias, hometown love for my but I'm so pumped about the Cardinals offense this year. But I had him at 4. The news broke. I ran to my rankings, and I'm like, I can only move him up one spot. So I moved.
Who'd you have at 3?
I had Watson at 3, but now obviously that shift and Hopkins going over, he drops to 4 or 5. I still like Watson, and in Dynasty, he could be somewhere else, and next year he could have a receiver. What do you think of Kyler Murray now? What do you predict, and what do you see for Deshaun Watson for now and for the future?
So I have Kyler Murray at 4 right now. So I'm with you. Like, it's interesting. I thought I would be. I apologize. I'm doing this on my phone, so if you see me doing this, it's because I'm getting texts and alerts, and I forgot to turn all those off.
No problem.
But so you think about Kyler Murray, who last year had the 4th most points by any quarterback in NFL history. That was a rookie. 4th most rookie quarterback fantasy points in NFL history. Averaged 34 rushing yards per game. And here's the 2 things. And I wrote about this. I did a love-hate column off of free agency in terms of sort of who won, who lost. And, Kyler Murray was a love because of DeAndre Hopkins. Okay. Last year, Kyler Murray, 27th in terms of out-of-pocket passer rating, right? And that's weird because he was 4th in out-of-pocket passing attempts. So he was out of the pocket a lot. He just wasn't very productive when he was, right? So since 2018, DeAndre Hopkins tied with Tyler Lockett for the most touchdown receptions when his quarterback is out of the pocket.
Great stat.
Now, some of that comes to the fact that Hopkins and Watson had such a great connection, right? But that's going to get there. And so Kyler Murray, who is great out of the pocket, I think what people don't appreciate is he's really accurate. Kyler Murray was pretty accurate last year. I think he'll only continue to improve, especially when he finally has a consistent receiving core. People forget, like, Christian Kirk was in and out of the lineup. Like, they threw a lot of different guys at Kyler Murray last year. So I think it helps with his out-of-the-pocket production, which is important. Here's one other stat. Kyler Murray, 23rd last year in terms of percentage of passes that were thrown deep. Okay? Percentage of passes that were thrown deep, meaning 15 yards or more down the field. Kyler Murray, 23rd. Well, now you add DeAndre Hopkins, who since 2017, third among wide receivers in terms of deep fantasy points. He's tied for second among wide receivers with touchdown receptions that are 15 yards or more downfield. So since 2017, he's third in fantasy points on deep plays, and he's tied for second in terms of deep touchdowns. It's not that Kyler Murray doesn't have a strong arm. He does. Kyler Murray can freaking chuck it. He just didn't have anyone to go down and get it for him last year. Now you've got a guy in DeAndre Hopkins who can stretch the field. And you roll out Kyler Murray. You're going to do some bootlegs. There'll also be some plays where it breaks down. And so that's where I think DeAndre Hopkins helps the most, is on the deep passing plays, on the bootlegs and the rollouts. And also, oh, by the way, he happens to be one of the best wide receivers in the NFL, just period.
Right. And unlike a guy like, you could say, Amari Cooper, he needs the ball a certain way. Otherwise, he could vanish. This is Hopkins. He can go up and get pretty much any football. That's going to help Kyler Murray, I think, develop a really quick rapport with him, because literally he'll go up and get anything thrown his way. And like you said, he's accurate. So it's a match made in heaven. And I think it's just going to be a dynamic, crazy, high-powered offense in 2020.
And then, you asked me about Deshaun Watson.
Yeah.
Like, I moved Deshaun Watson, and maybe I'm too low on him. I moved him to number 7, right? But the problem with Deshaun Watson is that almost all of his fantasy production has come with DeAndre Hopkins on the field. Hopkins doesn't really get hurt, so it's hard to know what this is going to be like. But just from a general standpoint, I don't think I'm breaking any news here. You lose a player the caliber of DeAndre Hopkins, that isn't good. That's a downgrade to your fantasy production. When you don't have a guy like that. I'm sorry?
Is he in Houston in 2021, do you think?
I think that remains to be seen. I think it remains to be seen whether Bill O'Brien's in Houston in 2021 and what else they do. Who do they add in the draft? Obviously it's one of the deepest drafts in recent memory for wide receivers coming out of college. So we'll see my expectation is they will draft a wide receiver. Who do they get? How productive is that person? I think those all will weigh into it. And who needs a quarterback, right, in 2021, right? So it's just, it's also, it's kind of devil you know versus devil you don't. I don't think it's a foregone conclusion that Deshaun Watson's in Houston next year. I mean, listen, Tom Brady's not in New England anymore, right? All bets are off with everything.
That's the talk.
Like, a year ago, if we'd said, Tom Brady's probably going to the Buccaneers, people would have been like, you're crazy, dude. Like, that guy's retiring the Patriot.
Right.
So anything is possible, especially in the NFL. But Deshaun Watson, I think when you replace DeAndre Hopkins with Randall Cobb, which is what the Texans have done so far, and then you've got Kenny Stills, who's been inconsistent. He's shown flashes, but he's inconsistent. Will Fuller, who's crazy talented, but can't stay healthy.
Right.
And then you add David Johnson. Look, Deshaun Watson is a good enough quarterback that there'll be production there. He'll get you some fantasy points with his legs. He always does. And I do think David Johnson has a rebound season. I do like David Johnson in Houston. And, there'll be a bunch of dump-offs there as well. But, yeah, I dropped him down to 7. I have Watson as QB 7. So I think he's still at QB1, but I think this is a big loss for Deshaun Watson.
Yeah, I want to ask you a couple of questions about your background. A lot of people are curious about your climb and when you started in fantasy. So what year did you start in fantasy, and how long? Everybody knows you got acquired by ESPN early in your career, but how long were you grinding, and what was your mindset? Did you ever envision that you'd be working for ESPN when you first started out, and just kind of paint that picture for people that are grinding it out and trying to climb in the business or in any business? They'd love to hear your kind of story.
Yeah. So first off, by the way, I appreciate the question. I'll say that I would not say that ESPN bought me early in my career. So, and I appreciate you using the word grinding, because that's the truth. I mean, that's the, what's the old saying? It took me a decade to become an overnight success, right? The fact is, so I've been playing fantasy sports since 1984. Mm-hmm. So I joined a fantasy baseball league, rotisserie league baseball, in 1984. I did my first fantasy football league in 1989. I started my own in 1999. I was working as a professional writer out in Hollywood, and I saw that RotoWorld, again, this is back in the days of AOL and CompuServe and dial-up, like, you've got mail. Like, it was actually a novel thing that somebody got. You got an email. Like, people today can't imagine that, but it was one of these, whoa, like, you get an email once every 3 days.
Yeah.
Right? And so anyway, RotoWorld had this blind ad saying, like, do you want to write fantasy sports? And so I sent him an email saying, listen, I'm a professional writer living out here in Hollywood. I write for TV and movies, but fantasy sports is my passion. I absolutely love it, and I think it would be so much fun just to write a column on the side. To which they wrote me back the next day, and they said, we looked you up on IMDb. Married with Children is our favorite show of all time. You're hired. So because I wrote for Married with Children, I got a chance to write for a low-trafficked internet website for free.
What episode was it?
I worked on 28 different episodes of the show.
Wow.
I personally wrote 5 of them. So, I mean, we can go through all of them, but you can look it up. I mean, you can look up.
That's amazing.
I think we only actually we wrote 5 of them. We got credit for 4 of them. We had to rewrite somebody. It's a long story. But at any rate, but yeah, I mean, I was a story editor for 28 episodes of Married with Children. I wrote the 250th episode of Married with Children.
Nice.
There you go. So that's a little piece of history there. But anyway, so I did that, and I did that for quite some time. And so, I wrote basketball, baseball, and fantasy football columns for RotoWorld for about 4.5 years. And I started doing some radio appearances as well. And then finally in 2004, people were starting to make money on the internet at that point. And I felt like I had an opportunity. And I at that point, I felt like I developed a big enough audience that I could start my own site. And so I'm skipping a few details. I go into a lot more detail into my book, Fantasy Life. If anyone's interested, you can get that. And you can buy it cheap, by the way, on Amazon these days. But at any rate, I basically started my own website called Talented Mr. Roto, which was my nickname on RotoWorld, and talentedmrroto.com. But it's not like nowadays you would go out to venture capitalists or, family offices, something like that. You try to raise money. Mm-hmm. Right. And I didn't do any of that. And I just basically scraped together a few bucks of my own that I'd saved and started my own website and grabbed a few people that I thought, that I noticed on message boards to start my own website, including, by the way, Brad Evans. Brad Evans started on Talented Mr. Roto. He was on I found him on a message board. Same with Andy Behrens. Same with a lot of people. Started on Talented Mr. Roto, Christopher Harris, Nando DeFino, so a lot of people. Anyway, but I basically realized that I didn't have any money to market the site. So I realized the only way that I could market the site and tell people to come check out the site was me. So I went to every radio station I could find, every TV station I could find, every website I could find, and said, I will write for you for free. I will come on your air for free. Just link back to my website. Just mention my website. And our promotion was going to be me. And so I just did that. And of course, anytime you're looking for promotion, especially at that time, one of the first places you would go is ESPN. And so I started doing local radio for ESPN in Los Angeles on 710 ESPN. Shout out to Mason in Ireland, who put me on, and Steve Mason especially. And, because he was by himself, and then John Ireland joined him. So it's not a knock on John Ireland, who's also awesome. But anyway, so it's 710 ESPN, and they liked me there, and that led to me doing some stuff on Cold Pizza, if you remember that TV show. Yep. And yep. Cold Pizza led to me doing some stuff on ESPN News, which led to me doing some stuff writing for ESPN the magazine. And eventually in 2007, they came to me and they said, yeah, and understand at that point, I'd been slogging for 8 years.
Yeah.
And I mean, right, and I'd been playing fantasy sports at that point for 17 years. And no, I take that back. At the point that ESPN bought my website in 2007, when they came to me, I'd been doing it professionally for 17 years. Sorry, I take that back. I'd been doing it professionally for 8 years.
Let's get a calculator.
Yeah, I was told there'd be no math. I'd been doing it professionally for 8 years, and I'd been playing it, professionally for almost 20, and playing it, I should say, not professionally, but I'd been playing it for almost 20, and doing it professionally for 8. And they came to me and they said, we've been talking internally about that fantasy football is big enough that we need a guy, that we want. We've been looking for a Mel Kiper. We keep talking internally. We need to find a Mel Kiper for fantasy football. We need to find a Mel Kiper for fantasy sports. And we like we like all the work you've done for us so far. At that point, the website was profitable. No one was buying mansions or islands or anything like that, but we were in the black.
Yeah.
And we had a good reputation. We won a bunch of awards, and people really liked the site. And so they were like, you know what? We'd like to buy the website, move you out to Connecticut, and make you the guy. And so, again, that happened, if you want to say relatively early. I mean, it was 8 years in.
Yeah.
But, so definitely, definitely had some luck there in terms of meeting the right people that were fans of mine, that promoted me to the right people, and I had some lucky networking there. But also that when I got those opportunities, when I got those meetings, I nailed those meetings, and I presented plans about what I would do and how I would do it, and
right.
I was ready when opportunity knocked. I answered the door, right? And so, but yeah, man, I mean, I worked my ass off every day for 8 years, and keep in mind, for a while there, I had a real job, and so I would do my real job during the day, and then at night I would work on the website, and honestly, on some level, it probably cost me my first marriage, because I was married at the time, and she would go to bed and I would stay up late, and then I would sleep in and she'd get up and go to work, and we just were, and she's a lovely woman and we're still friends, but we split up in 2005, and and that's definitely one of the reasons why, is because I was pursuing this thing. So
yeah, yeah. I mean,
it was a grind. It was a grind.
It's been a grind. I started in about I haven't been doing it as long as you, but I think in 2003 I launched Fantasy Football Extreme. I'm not sure if you remember that site back in the day. I looked at your site as somebody I was trying to emulate back then. I got acquired by Fantasy Football Starters, and then now I've started the Fantasy Football Show and Sleeper U not too many years ago. So I'm rebuilding, you could say. But I remember back then in 2003-04 when I started, PayPal wouldn't even let you be their gateway for fantasy football. It was very, very touch and go as to how you could collect money. Yep. And it was crazy. People don't realize how different it was back then, and people did not like fantasy football people. It was so it was a slog. It was a slog, and you had to convince people, and it took a listen. I mean, if you read my book, you'll see that the ESPN thing happened, but just to give some inspiration here, I'll just talk about the fact that I was turned the pitch that I made to ESPN about I shorthanded it for you guys, but I had multiple meetings with ESPN about trying to do more and more with them, obviously. But I also had those meetings with Fox Sports, with CBS, with Yahoo, multiple meetings with all of them, and they all turned me down. And by the way, ESPN turned me down twice before they ended up ultimately buying the website, and hiring me in 2007. So, man, I mean, I got a lot of no's, a lot of no's. You define it as somewhat some luck, but really the hardest working people are the luckiest. That's you turn that into luck. It wasn't. That's hard work. Doing what you did and paving the way. People don't realize how much you paved the way. And make sure you read his book. Amazon. It's called Fantasy Life, right? They can get it. Yeah, get his book. Read it if you're interested. There's a lot of people that are popping up in the fantasy industry left and right, and they're the best this, they're the best that on their Instagram profiles right away, and they want everything now. But you just painted a map for people. The amount of grind you did before you even got to ESPN's double and triple what a lot of people have already done that are trying to get into the industry now, and it's just it's a patient game.
It is. It's 100%. It takes time to build an audience, to build trust, so it's a challenge. And I appreciate you saying that. It's very kind of you, and that's one of the things that I'm most proud of, and is sort of that journey. Because I have to tell you, because I got to ESPN in 2007, and one of the I get there and I think like, wow, I've made it. Like I'm on ESPN, I'm on Easy Street, and then I get there and I realize, oh no. Like half the company doesn't think fantasy football belongs anywhere near on TV. The people that hired me certainly did, but I had to go. As insane as this, it sounds insane to think about it now, but you have to understand in 2007 it was a very different time, and even before then, to your point, like PayPal wouldn't even take it. People weren't sure if it was gambling or not. There were definitely people that thought it was nerdy and too niche, and it should be online on the internet, and it didn't belong on TV. And we to this day we still struggle to get it significantly on TV. It's on it much more than it ever has been, but it's still it's not as prevalent as you'd think it would be given the popularity of it. And I spent my first year and a half at ESPN having a meeting with literally every ad sales executive, every radio executive, every Sports Center producer, every NFL Live producer, Baseball Tonight, every single one of our TV shows, the NFL editor and the MLB editor of ESPN.com, explaining this is what fantasy is. This is why it's important to our fans. This is the business case as to why we need to do more coverage, why we need to put more people on TV, why we need to do this, and this. Like a lot of PowerPoints. First year and a half, a lot of PowerPoints.
It's much like blogging in the newspaper world many years ago. It's like, oh, there's this department over here. They blog like they're nothing. They're not going to amount to anything.
Right.
And I kind of feel like even though social media is allowing video to kind of take form in terms of controlling fantasy content, I still feel like there's a lot of opportunity. One of my goals with the Fantasy Football Show, and I do 24-hour live streams, I literally am trying to build this thing really, really fast, is I want to have like a 10 to 2 or a show every day on YouTube and create this new way to consume fantasy football. It isn't just on social media. It's not just on YouTube. It's going to become like the norm of how you consume it on a daily basis, on a consistent basis. I know there are some shows that kind of try and do that. But I want it to literally be where somebody comes every day, 10 to 2 or 7 to 10 at night. That would ruin my relationship, but
right.
I got to be.
It's what you got to do, man. If you want it, you want to grind it. I mean, I always felt that. I'm like, listen, I think I'm pretty good with stats, but I'm not Nate Silver. I'm not Bill James, right? I'm not as good at stats as Mike Clay, just to give a shout out to, one of my colleagues at ESPN. Mike does a great job, right? And I'm pretty good at breaking down film, but listen, I'm not Dan Orlovsky or Matt Bowen or Teddy Bruschi, to speak of some of my other colleagues at ESPN, right? And so, what I felt like is the one thing that I knew I could control. There was a lot of things that I couldn't control, but the one thing that I could control was how hard I worked. I was just like, I'm just going to outwork everyone. Like, and if I fail, I fail, but at least it won't be because I didn't put in enough effort. And so,
yep.
Like I didn't sleep. I still don't sleep. Right. Yeah. And so you just try to outwork everyone. Right. Well, that's the one thing you can control.
Well, we're all emulating you as you speak. It's why I grind so hard, and I appreciate you, Matthew. Top 5 running back. You're watching the Fantasy Football Show.
Smitty.
Take a lap.